Today's lesson is about multiplication and division of integers. Multiplication, and division of integers. Students, after this lesson, you are expected to 1. Divide integers. 2. Multiply integers. Multiply integers. Now, let's proceed to the lesson. The first part, multiplication of integers. Multiplication of integers. Okay, let's see this through example. Example. Multiply the following integers. Multiply the following integers. Following integers by converting into sum. By converting into sum. The first one is, let's try to multiply this. Let's start from this simple question. 4 times 3. 4 times 3. Let's try to convert this 4 times 3 in the form of sum. So, to convert this, it says 4 threes. So, 4, or in other words, 4 times 3. Write 4 3 times, it means. Therefore, here, this can be converted in the form of sum in this form. 4 plus 4 plus 4. How many 4s? 3. This is 4 times 3. Therefore, we can add this to get the product. 4 plus 4 is this, 8. 8 plus 4 is this, 12. That's it. Therefore, the product of these two integers, 4 times 3, gives you 12. Now, let's continue to another example. B. Let's try to multiply this one. Negative 3 times 2. Negative 3 times 2. Please, students, try to convert this product in the form of sum. I'll give you 10 seconds for this question. Students, have you tried the question? Good. Now, let's see the answer together. Negative 3 times 2. This means negative 3 how many times? 2 times. Therefore, to convert this in product in sum form, you have minus 3 plus minus 3. What is the sum of these two? Good. It is negative 6. So, we have negative 3 here, again negative 3. In total, you have negative 6. The answer will be negative 6. Therefore, here, minus 3 times 2 is equal to negative 6. Now, let's continue to the other example. Let's take this one. Negative 4 times 3. Please, students, please try this question. I'll give you 10 seconds for this. students? Have you tried the question? Nice. Now, let's see the answer. Here it says -4 times 3. This means -4 how many times? 3 times. Therefore, we write -4 3 times. -4 plus -4 plus -4. So this will be the sum form of this product. So what will be the answer? Now let's add this. -4 plus -4 is this. This -8. And again, when you add -4, you will have -12. Therefore, the correct answer for this is -12. This will be the correct answer. Now, from this activity, let me add one more example. Okay, take this one. 2 times -5, 2 times -5. Let's try to find the product of these two numbers. Let's try together this question. By the way, 2 times -5 is equivalently written as -5 times 2, the same. Therefore, here, this means equivalently it is -5 times 2. Therefore, when you convert this in some form, how many -5 do you have? 2 times. So we write -5 2 times. Therefore, here you have this -5 plus -5. What will be the final answer? Good. The answer will be -10. You have here 5 negatives. On these 5 negatives, you add another 5 negatives. In total, you have -10. The correct answer will be this, -10. Now, let's try to conclude a certain point from this example. When you multiply a positive and a negative number, simply forget the negative sign and multiply the number. 3 times 2, you know it is 6, and put the negative sign easily. Again here, look this one, -4 times +3. In this case, one is positive, the other is negative number. To find the product, put the negative sign and multiply the numbers 4 and 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Therefore, the answer will be this -12. Again here, look this example. When you multiply these two numbers, one is positive, the other is negative. In this case, simply put the negative sign and take the product of the two numbers 25. 2 times 5 is this much? It is 10. Therefore, the correct answer for this will be this -10. Okay, so now let's take a basic concept, a basic note here from the activity 1. The product of positive, and negative number, the product of positive and negative number is negative. Again, the product of an integer and 0 is always 0. The product of an integer and 0 is 0. Now, let's proceed to additional examples. Example, find the product of the following integers. Find the product of the following integers. Okay, the first one, negative 5 times 3. What is the product of these two integers? Good. The product of negative 5 and 3, to multiply these two numbers, first put the negative sign because one is positive, the other is negative. We said the product of positive and negative number always is negative. So the sign of the product is negative, and then you multiply the number 5 and 3. 5 times 3 is 15. This will be the answer. Now let's see this one. What will be the product of 2 times negative 6? What will be the product of these two numbers? 2 times negative 6. Okay, good. To multiply these two, first let's determine the sign. As we said, when you multiply positive and negative number, the product is this negative, and then you multiply the numbers 2 and 6. So 2 times 6 it is 12. So the answer will be this negative 12. Now let's proceed. See, what will be the product of 0 and 4? What will be 0 times 4? Good. As we said, the product of 0 and any integer is always 0. So the answer will be this 0. Now let's proceed to example D. Take these two numbers. Negative 8 times 3. Negative 8 times 0. What is the product of these two numbers? Negative 8 and 0. Good. The answer it is 0, because we said the product of an integer and 0 is always 0. So the correct answer is this 0. Now let's proceed to how to find the product of two integers having the same sign, or the product of two negative integers. We'll go to that point now. Product of two negative integers. Product of two negative integers. Okay. Now, to find the product of two negative integers, let's try to find the answer for the following question. The first one, negative 2 times 2. What will be the product of negative 2 and 2? Good. The answer it is negative 4. This will be this negative 4. Now take this one, negative 2 times 1. What is the product of negative 2 and 1? Good. 1 is positive, the other is negative. The answer is negative, and you multiply. 2 times 1 is 2. Therefore, the answer will be this negative 2. Let's continue. Find the product of negative 2 and 0. What will be the product of negative 2 and 0? The product of negative 2 and 0? Good. The answer it is 0. We say the product of any integer with 0 gives us 0. Therefore, this will be the answer. Now let's proceed. Let's try to find the product of negative 2 and negative 1. What will be the product of these two integers? Okay, now let's try to find. Let's see the pattern here. Look, when you multiply by 2, by 1, by 0, and you have these results, minus 4, minus 2, minus 0. What will be the next number following the pattern? Let's draw, let's see this pattern on number line. Look here, assume there is negative 4 here, negative 2, and 0. What will be here? What will be the answer? The answer will be this 2. Very nice. Next to the row, you have, following the pattern, you have 2. Therefore, here, -2 times -1 gives us +2. So, following this, we can conclude that the product of two negative integers is always positive. Therefore, here, the product of two negative integers, two negative integers, the product of two negative integers is positive. So when you multiply two negative integers, simply forget the sign and then multiply the numbers. 2 and 1, 2 times 1 is 2. That will be the answer. Now, let's see example for this. Example. Find the product of the following. The product of the following integers. Okay, the first question. Let's multiply these two. -5 times -4. Please, students, try this question. I'll give you 10 seconds for this. Students, have you tried the question? Very nice. Let's see the answer together. As we said, when you multiply two negative integers, the answer is this positive, and then just simply multiply 5 and 4. 5 times 4, it is 20. Therefore, the answer will be this +20, or simply we write 20. Now, let's proceed to another number. -10 times -3. Please, students, try this question. I'll give you 10 seconds for this. Students, have you tried the question? Very nice. Now, let's see the answer together. -10 times -3. Both are negative, so the product is positive. Therefore, here it is positive, and 3 times 10 is this 30. So the correct answer is this +30, or simply we write as 30. That's it. Now, let's proceed to the other section. Product of multiple integers. Now, let's see this one, for example. A, find the product of the following. Find the product of the following. Integers. Okay, the first one, A. Let's multiply this one. -1 times -1 times -1 times -1. Let's multiply this. What will be the answer? Let's see this together. Okay, to multiply this first, just multiply sequentially. First, multiply these two. -1 times -1 is positive. 1, that's correct, times here you have minus 1 times minus 1. Again, multiply these two. What will be the product? 1 times negative 1. In this case, positive and negative. The product is negative. So you'll have minus 1 times, again, here it is, negative 1. So let's multiply these two. Minus 1 times minus 1 is it is. Since both are negative, the product is positive. The answer will be it is positive 1. That's right. Good. Now, let's continue to the next example. Multiply this. Minus 1 times minus 1 times minus 1 times minus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minus 1s. Please, students, try this question. I'll give you 20 seconds for this. Students, have you tried the question? Good. Let's see the answer together. When you multiply these two, minus 1 times minus 1, you have positive 1. Again, let's multiply these two. Minus 1 times minus 1, it gives us positive 1 times the remaining minus 1 here. So, when you multiply this, 1 times 1 is this 1 times minus 1. So, the final answer will be this 1 times negative 1 will be this minus 1. This will be the answer. Now, look from these two examples. When you multiply the numbers, simply you can count the number of negatives to state whether the answer is positive or not. Here, let's count the number of negatives here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. When you face 4 negatives, the answer will be positive. In other words, when you count the number of negatives, if it is even, the answer will be it is positive. Again here, let's count the number of negatives. When you count the number of negatives here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's odd. When we count the number of negative, if it is odd, the product will be this negative. Therefore, note that if there are even negative factors, if there are even negative factors, then the sign of the product is positive. Then the sign of product is it is positive. If there are odd negative factors, then the sign of product is it is negative. Now let's see example for this. Example, find the product of the following integers. Find the product of the following integers. A, take this one, negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. let's do this question together. Okay, first, before multiplying, what will be the sign of the product? Is it positive or negative? Let's count the number of negatives. Here you have 1, 2, 3 negatives. So the number of negatives is odd. Therefore, the sign of the product is it is negative. And then you multiply the numbers. You multiply the numbers 2, 2, and 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. Good. Therefore, the answer for this one will be is negative 8. So, let me give you one question for you. Negative 1 times 3 times negative 5 times 2. What will be the product of these numbers? I'll give you 20 seconds for this. Students, have you tried the question? Very nice. Let's see the answer together. Here, first, let's find the products, the sign of the product. The sign of the product, let's count the number of negatives. You have 1, 2, only 2 negatives, even number of negative factors, even number of negative factors, even number of negative factors, even number of negative factors. So in this case, the product of the sign of the product is positive. Therefore, the sign of the product of these numbers is positive, and then let's multiply the numbers. 1 times 3 times 5 times 2. Let me write again here. 1, 3, 5, 2. Therefore, here, 1 times 3 it is 3. 3 times 5 times 2. 3 times 5, good, is 15. 15 times 2, the final answer will be 3. The sign of product, as we said, is positive. Therefore, the answer will be positive 30. That's it. Now, we'll proceed to division of integers. Division of integers. Okay, let's see this concept also through example. Example. Divide the following integers. Divide the following integers by converting it into multiplication. Okay, now the first one, let's see this. 12 divided by 3 gives us what? So to find the answer for this by converting into multiplication, this means to get 12, 3 must be multiplied by what number? So 3 times this, the result must give us this 12. So what number should be here so that, or what number should be here so that the product of these two gives us 12? The answer is this. 3 times 4 yeah, the answer is this 3 times 4. The number must be 4. So the number here must be this 4. The product gives you 12. Therefore, here the answer will be this 4. Now, let's see another example. Let's try this one. Negative 6 divided by 2 gives us what? Let's try to find this answer by converting this into product. Okay, let's convert it. This means it is negative 6 must be equal to 2 times the quotient. 2 times the quotient. So what will be this? Let's try to find the number here. Okay, 2 times a certain negative number. It must be, this must be negative number to get the product negative. Therefore, here, when you multiply 2 by negative 2, you get minus 4. When you multiply 2 by negative 3, you get negative 6. So the number here must be, it is negative 3. Therefore, the answer here it is negative 3. Let's proceed. Okay, take this one. 4 divided by negative 2 gives us what? 4 divided by negative 2. It gives us what? Let's convert this into multiplication form. So here we get 4 when you multiply negative 2 with certain number. What must be the number here? If you take 2, negative 2 times 2, it gives us what? It gives us negative 4. It doesn't give us 4. So the number here must be negative. So the product of two negatives, as we said, gives us positive. So the number here must be negative. Therefore, if you put negative here, negative 2 here, the product of negative 2 and negative 2 gives us positive 4. Therefore, the correct answer for this question will be this, negative 2. By the way, this is for sake of activity. We will generalize, or we just put a rule for dividing an integers. So here, from these two activities, you can see that when you divide a negative and a positive number, the result you get is negative. Simply you divide as usual. Simply 6 divided by 2 gives us what? 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. So the sign of the quotient is negative, and the answer will be minus 3. Again, here, when you divide 4 by negative 2, simply determine the sign of the quotient. If one of the two numbers is negative, the quotient will be negative, and divide the number as usual. So here, 4 divided by negative 2, put negative 2 and you divide 4 by 2. 4 divided by 2 is this 2. The answer will be negative. Again, let's add one more example. Let's take this. Negative 10 divided by negative 2. What will be the answer? Let's convert this into product form. So we get negative 10 if we multiply negative 2 with a certain number. Okay, so what number should be here? Positive or negative? To get a negative number, it must be positive, because the product of positive and negative gives you negative. Therefore, the number here must be positive, and it must be positive 5. 5 times negative 2 gives us negative 10. Therefore, the answer will be 5. The answer will be this 5. So from this activity, you can see that if both the dividend and the divisor are negative, the sign of the quotient is positive. And you divide the numbers as usual. Simply, just forget the negatives. Divide 10 by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. The answer will be 5. So, as a rule, we can just write the following as a note. 1. The quotient of two integers having different sign. The quotient of two integers having different sign is negative. Again, the quotient of two negative integers, the quotient of two negative integers is this positive. As you can see here, the quotient of two negative integers, the result is positive. It is positive 5. Here you can see that the quotient of two integers having different sign. One is positive, the other is negative. The quotient is negative. Again here, the quotient of two integers having different sign, the quotient is negative. That's it. So now I'll give you additional example for this. Example. Okay, evaluate the following. A, please try to divide this negative 20 divided by 5. Please students try this question. I'll give you 10 seconds for this. Students, have you tried the question? Good. Let's see the answer. Here, the two integers have different sign. Therefore, the quotient is negative. The quotient is negative, and then you divide 20 by 5. 20 divided by 5 gives us what? Nice. It gives us 4. Therefore, the answer will be is negative 4. Now, let's proceed to another example. Let's take this one. Negative 15 divided by negative 3. Negative 15 divided by negative 3. Students, please try this question. I will give you 10 seconds for this. Students, have you tried the question? Very nice. Let's see the answer. So, when you see these two integers, they have the same sign, or both are negatives. As we said, when both integers are negative, the sign of the quotient is it is positive, and then you divide the numbers. What's the quotient of 15 by 3? 15 divided by 3 it is 5. So the correct answer is positive 5. Most of the time we write in this form. It is 5. Let me add one more question. See. Okay, divide this one. Negative 7 divided by 2. Please, students, try this question. I will give you 10 seconds for this. Students, have you tried the question? Very nice. Now, let's see the answer. These two numbers, as you can see, they have different sign. One is positive, the other is negative. So the sign of the quotient is negative, and then you divide 7 by 2. Let's divide 7 by 2 here. 7 divided by 2. 3 times 2 gives us 6, and then you subtract 7 minus 6, it is 1. 1 divided by 2 it cancel, give point here and add 0 here. So 10 divided by 2 is this 5. Therefore 5 times 2 it is 10. The answer will be 3.5 here. So negative 7 divided by 2 gives us negative 3.5. That's it. So this is all about today's lesson. Just to summarize what we have seen today in today's lesson, let's just put the key points, and then I'll give you questions that you will try in your home. Summary. 1. The product of positive and negative number is negative. 1. The product of positive and negative. The product of positive and negative number or integer is this negative. This is it. Negative 3 times, or if you ask it like this, the sign of the product is negative, and you multiply the numbers, you have this one. Again, second concept we have seen, the product of two negative integers. The product of two negative integers. The product of two negative integers is positive. We said the product of two negative integers is positive. For example, if you take this one, negative 2 times negative 3, the product is positive. You have positive 6. And again, we have seen this one, quotient. The quotient of two integers having different sign. The quotient of two integers having different sign, different sign is this negative. For example, if you have this one, negative 4 divided by 2, both they have different sign, the quotient is negative. 4 divided by 2. Again, if you have 20 divided by negative 5, the two numbers have different sign, so the quotient is this negative, and you divide 20 by 5, you have negative 4. And finally, we have seen also the quotient of two integers having same sign, or two negative integers, I mean. The quotient of two negative integers. The quotient of two negative integers, is positive. For example, if you have negative 10 divided by negative 2, both are negative, the quotient is this positive. 10 divided by 2 gives us 5. The answer will be positive 5. This is all about today's lesson. So I'll give you question. Okay, so exercise. 1. Evaluate the following. Evaluate the following. Evaluate the following. A, okay, negative 12 times 3. B, negative 6 times negative 7. C, negative 10 times negative 2 times negative 4. D, try this one, negative 12 divided by 6. E, negative 25 divided by negative 4. Please, students, try this question. I will give you 1 minute to copy the question. So until next lesson, goodbye.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good.